Welcome to the Texas Agriculture Law YouTube channel. I'm Tiffany Lashman. Today we're going to address a question I get fairly often, and that is, what's the difference between open range and closed range when it comes to Texas fence law? Huge issue, and really it's probably the most important question you can ask anytime you're analyzing a fence law issue in Texas. Step one is you have to figure out if you're in an area that is open range or closed range. So what's the difference? Well, an open range area you'll sometimes hear called fence out. And the idea there is that if you are a livestock owner in an open range or fence out area, it's not your legal obligation to fence your animals in. Instead, in an open range area, the legal obligation is on the neighboring landowner to fence those animals out. So if your neighbor doesn't want your cattle getting on his property, it is his obligation to build a fence to keep those cattle off of his land. That's an open range area. Now, as you might imagine, closed range is the opposite. And so in a closed range area, sometimes you'll hear that called fence in. That legal obligation is on the livestock owner to fence his or her animals in. Specifically, the way the law is worded in Texas is that landowners in closed range areas cannot permit those livestock to run at large. And so you'll see there that the legal obligation, if it's on the livestock owner or whether it's on a neighboring landowner, completely depends on if you're in an area that is open range or closed range. So why does this matter? When does this come up? Well, it matters in a number of instances related to fence law. The first is if there's a collision where there's livestock on the roadway and someone hits them with a vehicle. The first question in the lawsuit when you're thinking about liability for that livestock owner is whether they're in an area that's open range or closed range. Now, the analysis continues on from there, but knowing that answer is the starting point to analyze whether there can be potential liability. It also comes up in questions related to building fences, right? Whose obligation is it to either fence the animals in or out? When you're trying to decide, if the neighbor wants to build a fence or doesn't want to build a fence, this can play in there as well. So hopefully that will clear up a little bit of the confusion about what it means to be open range or closed range. One more question you may have is, well, what is Texas? Are we open range or closed range? And that answer is a little bit more complex than you might think. So the answer is the general rule or kind of basic starting point in Texas is that we assume Texas is open range. That's the case in parts of the state where that has not been changed by another law. And that's where it's a little bit tricky because actually there are two major types of laws that have changed much of the state from open range to closed range. The first of those is a statewide statute that says every state or U.S. highway in the state of Texas is closed range. And if you are a livestock owner along a highway, your obligation is not to knowingly permit your animals to run at large. So all state or U.S. highways, that does not include farm to market roads in this definition. This is going to be like I-40 or I-35 or Highway 6 or Highway 287. Those are going to be those state and U.S. highways that are closed range everywhere across Texas. The second way that this could be changed in Texas might be closed range is if your county has passed a local stock law. Counties have the ability to hold elections to decide to vote on whether the county, or it may be precinct by precinct within that county, should change from the presumption of open range to closed range. And so you need to check and see if your county has passed that type of local stock law to know if the county is open or closed range. We've got a number of resources related to fence law that we'll link below. One of those is a handbook we wrote for Texas landowners specifically on fence law called 5 Strands. You can download that for free in the show notes. And we also got a podcast episode we did with Kyle Weldon, who's a lawyer in Fort Worth, talking all about fence law issues across Texas. Feel free to check that out in the notes below.